The air tastes of copper and desperation. Two figures face each other in what passes for a street, hands hovering near holstered iron. The silence stretches like a taut wire. This is your death sentence. You've just walked into the most dangerous social experiment in human history, and I'm about to prove why you wouldn't survive your first night in the real Wild West. Not because you lack courage, but because you're carrying assumptions about human decency that will get you killed before sunset. By the end of this video, you'll understand the 3 fatal mistakes that doomed 70% of new arrivals within their first month, and why your modern morals are more dangerous than any 6-shooter ever made. But first, if you think you could actually survive the frontier, hit that subscribe button and comment "Survivor" below. Trust me, after the next 15 minutes, you might want to change your answer. Welcome back, history lovers. I'm about to take you on the most brutal reality check in American history. We're not talking Hollywood cowboys here. We're diving into the mathematical certainty of why someone like you would be dead within 24 hours of stepping off that train in Dodge City, Kansas, summer of 1878. And here's what's going to shock you most. Your death wouldn't be random violence. It would be the inevitable result of a civilization that had completely reimagined what it meant to be human. The Great Inversion. Between 1850 and 1890, the American frontier became history's most radical social experiment. Picture this: 10,000 strangers arriving in months, speaking different languages, worshipping different gods, carrying completely different definitions of right and wrong. They're dropped into a landscape with no infrastructure, no established law, no social hierarchy beyond what they could carve out with loaded weapons. Normal civilizations evolved slowly over centuries. The frontier compressed that entire process into weeks. Towns like Deadwood, Tombstone, and your current location of Dodge City became laboratories where human nature was stripped to its absolute essentials and rebuilt according to principles that bore no resemblance to anything that came before or after. Here's what would shock you most. The strongest didn't survive, the most adaptable did. The most moral didn't prosper, the most useful did. Every assumption about human society was overturned in a single generation, creating communities that functioned with ruthless efficiency while operating by rules that would seem utterly insane to outside observers. Your soft hands betray you before you even speak. Clean fingernails scream that you've never worked for survival. Unmarked knuckles advertise that you've never been in real fights. These aren't just signs of inexperience. They're death certificates written across your body in a language everyone here reads fluently. Mistake number 1. The reputation economy will devour you. Stay with me, because mistake 2 involves something you do every morning that would mark you for elimination. The frontier operated on an economic system so alien to normal market principles it might have been designed by visitors from another planet. Money existed, sure, but the actual currency determining access to goods and survival was reputation, measured by metrics that would horrify any civilized merchant. Your credit rating was determined by kill count. Storekeepers offered discounts to known gunfighters, not from friendship, but because angering someone capable of violence was catastrophically bad for business. They charged premium prices to preachers and teachers because they knew such people wouldn't fight back. You walk into Henderson's general store, confident that your pocket full of silver dollars will buy you everything you need. The storekeeper, a thin man with calculating eyes, looks you up and down. Henderson quotes you prices 50% higher than the scarred man before you, someone who paid with a casual nod and walked out without anyone demanding immediate payment. That's not greed. That's Henderson calculating the probability you'll be alive next week to pay your debts. The statistics should chill you. In Dodge City during peak years, 30% of new arrivals never saw the next spring. Not from disease or accident, from simple inability to establish their place in the reputation economy quickly enough to survive. Employment followed the same terrifying logic. The school teacher's primary qualification wasn't education. It was the ability to protect the schoolhouse from raiders, drunk cowboys, and hostile tribes. The bank teller needed counting skills, certainly, but more importantly, he needed to demonstrate that robbing his institution would cost more lives than the vault contained. Your employment interview consists of demonstrating your capacity for violence against strangers. When you hesitate to beat a suspected pickpocket with iron rods, potential employers note your weakness and move to candidates who understand that mercy kills those foolish enough to practice it. Morning. Meet Dodge City's most respected citizens. Let me introduce you to the people who will determine whether you see another sunrise and why their existence will shatter your understanding of human nature. The mayor begins each day reading scripture on his front porch. He's personally killed 11 men in what the community considers fair fights. His morning prayers are as regular as his evening visits to the cemetery, where he places wildflowers on graves of men whose names he carved into wooden markers with his own hands. This isn't hypocrisy, it's complete reconstruction of moral categories. You see contradiction, they see efficiency. The town's most trusted banker is Sarah McGillicuddy, whose financial institution operates from the back rooms of the largest brothel in 3 territories. She calculates compound interest while her employees negotiate other transactions. Her ledgers are meticulous, her business practices scrupulously honest, and her establishment provides the closest thing to a social safety net this community possesses. Your children's schoolteacher is Thomas Whitmore, who speaks 4 languages, recites Shakespeare from memory, and is wanted for murder in 4 states. He's the most educated person within 500 miles, the most patient teacher anyone has encountered, and the most efficient killer the territories have produced. Parents fight to get their children into his classroom, not in spite of his reputation, but because of it. This is where your modern mind starts fracturing. In frontier communities, your past existed only insofar as it contributed to present usefulness. What mattered wasn't what you had done, but what you could do for collective survival. You could be a killer and a Sunday school teacher, but you had to excel at both. You could run a brothel and serve as the town banker, but your books better balance to the penny. The frontier had created a society where moral categories were completely inverted, and survival was the only virtue that mattered. And that's just mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is even deadlier. Mistake number 2. Democracy of the rope. Wait until you see what mistake number 3 reveals about something you consider a virtue. Voices rise from the town square, but this isn't a political rally. This is frontier democracy, where democracy means something far more immediate and permanent than anything practiced in established states. 57 citizens form a rough circle around an accused cattle rustler. The evidence is circumstantial. Tom Henderson's prize bull found in the defendant's possession. Tom Henderson found with a bullet in his back. No witnesses, no physical evidence linking the accused to murder. Any legitimate court would dismiss this immediately. But this isn't a legitimate court. This is vigilante democracy operating by principles that would make constitutional scholars weep. No lawyer present. They're obstacles to justice. No judge. The community serves that function. No appeals process. Community decisions are final as death itself. the San Francisco Vigilance Committee created entire parallel legal systems with written constitutions, elected officers, and official seals pressed into death warrants. More organized than most territorial governments, significantly more efficient than any court system you've encountered. Here's where your civilized instincts become fatal. Your belief in presumption of innocence, your insistence on proper evidence, your discomfort with collective punishment. Every principle that makes you a good citizen marks you as dangerously subversive here. The voting reveals democracy's brutal mathematics. Every adult male gets a voice, but abstaining equals siding with the accused. Speaking for due process marks you as someone who values legal technicalities over community safety. Arguing for mercy suggests you're soft, making you a potential security risk that might need addressing next. You can't help yourself. When they ask for opinions, you stand up and speak about proper investigation, the dangers of mob justice, the need for cooling off periods. The crowd listens politely. Then they note your name, your appearance, your obvious unfamiliarity with frontier realities. The vote concludes 39 for immediate hanging, 15 for permanent banishment, 3 abstentions. The abstainers are also noted, their communities standing permanently diminished. 30 minutes are allocated for final messages. The rope is prepared with business-like efficiency. What would horrify you most isn't the brutality, it's the effectiveness. Towns with active vigilante committees had measurably lower crime rates than established cities with professional police forces. Swift certainty proved more effective than elaborate, but ineffective legal machinery. Comment below if you think you could have stayed silent during that vote, because most people can't. Mistake number 3, the honor matrix. The final section reveals the mathematical formula that sealed your fate. 2 men circle each other in the saloon, following ritual patterns refined through countless deadly repetitions. This isn't random violence. It's highly formalized social interaction governed by rules more complex than diplomatic protocols between nations. Marcus Henley accused James Rourke of manipulating cards, not loudly, but with the precision of someone who understands words have consequences measured in heartbeats. Rourke's response was carefully measured, a denial that left Henley room to withdraw without losing face, but firm enough that repeating the charge would require satisfaction. You see 2 men arguing and assume reason could diffuse the situation. Catastrophically wrong. These men aren't arguing, they're performing death dances that can only end in bloodshed or ritualized submission. Escalation proceeds through predictable stages, each offering both participants opportunities to back down while simultaneously making retreat increasingly difficult. Witnesses gather not just to watch, but to ensure proper forms are observed and to testify about whatever follows legitimacy. The formal challenge sounds polite. I believe you're a liar and a cheat, and I'm prepared to prove it. The response is equally civilized. I'm at your disposal whenever convenient. Seconds are chosen, weapons selected, ground rules established with the formality of international treaties. Your fatal mistake would be assuming these protocols minimize harm. The opposite is true. They ensure that when violence occurs, it's decisive, public, and socially meaningful. No ambiguity, no appeals, no second chances. The gunfight lasts 3 seconds. Henley proves faster. Rourke dies with a bullet through his heart. No dramatic music, no final speeches, no moral lessons. One man walks away, another becomes a statistic. Here's what would break your modern mind. Everyone considers this perfectly satisfactory resolution to a social problem. Justice served with maximum efficiency, minimum community disruption. Hit that like button if this is blowing your mind. We're about to get to the part that explains why you specifically wouldn't make it. The identity market, where truth goes to die. Meet William Henderson, also known as James Mitchell, Texas Jack, Reverend Samuel Davidson, and Captain Robert Morrison. He's worn all 5 identities in Dodge City over the past 2 years, sometimes switching between them during single conversations, depending on what each situation required. This isn't fraud. It's a survival strategy refined to an art form. Where your past could get you killed, reinvention wasn't just common, it was essential. Entire industries developed around providing new histories for people escaping old ones. Professional identity merchants maintained detailed catalogues of available backgrounds, complete with supporting documentation, character references, and meticulously crafted histories capable of withstanding all but the most intensive investigation. War heroes required proof of service, intimate knowledge of specific battles, and supporting scars in anatomically correct locations. A grieving widower seeking justice needed a tragic backstory detailed enough to justify future violence. Prices varied according to danger quotient. Peaceful backgrounds were cheap because they offered no particular advantages in a violent world. But reputations as efficient killers commanded premium prices because they provided immediate social credibility in communities where violence was the ultimate currency. The most sophisticated practitioners maintained entire stables of personas, switching identities as circumstances required. Businessman during daylight hours, high-stakes gambler in the evening, vigilante committee member after midnight, each identity supported by appropriate documentation, clothing, and practiced mannerisms. Your fatal flaw is honesty about your background. In a community where everyone performed carefully constructed versions of themselves, insisting on being authentically yourself marked you as either dangerously stupid or hiding something so terrible that even the frontier's flexible moral standards couldn't accommodate it. People who insisted on being themselves were suspected of concealing crimes so heinous that even a society comfortable with routine killing found them unacceptable. The evening, the intelligence network. Don't click away. The next section explains exactly how your death would unfold. As the sun descends toward the horizon, the community begins its real business. The physical transformation starts immediately. The church becomes a courtroom for conducting sensitive tribunals that require absolute discretion. The schoolhouse becomes an armory where weapons are distributed for night patrols. The general store's back rooms become a clearinghouse for goods that territorial law considers problematic. More dramatic is the transformation of people themselves. Sarah McGillicuddy begins elaborate preparations for high-stakes gambling sessions where cheating is expected and proving it requires killing someone. Thomas Whitmore gathers intelligence reports that make him valuable as an information broker to competing factions. The soft-spoken preacher prepares for his role as the vigilante committee's most reliable executioner. In the saloon's carefully concealed back room, the community's actual leadership convenes for their daily briefing. No official titles exist, but these 6 individuals make every decision determining who lives, who dies, who prospers, and who disappears without trace. Intelligence flows through channels sophisticated enough to impress professional spies. Working women provide intimate access to influential men who share secrets under the combined influence of alcohol and physical pleasure. Bartenders serve as central processors, receiving reports from dozens of sources, analyzing patterns for actionable intelligence, and distributing information to parties who can profit from exclusive access. Your file has been compiled throughout the day. Detailed reports from every interaction, careful analysis of every statement you made, professional assessment of every action you took. The intelligence is thorough, accurate, and utterly damning. The consensus is unanimous. You represent more liability than asset to community survival, more threat than value to collective security. Communities operating with razor-thin survival margins simply cannot afford individuals who consume resources without contributing to collective defense capabilities. The mathematics of your elimination. The decision is made with business-like efficiency. No dramatic speeches, no elaborate justifications, no personal animosity. You represent a problem set, problems get solved with the minimum resources necessary to ensure they don't recur. This isn't personal, it's mathematical. You seem decent enough, someone they might have enjoyed knowing under different circumstances. But circumstances don't permit the luxury of personal preferences when community survival hangs by threads that individual weakness can snap. Here's the brutal calculus that seals your fate. Every individual must contribute more value than they consume. Every action must enhance rather than threaten survival prospects. You've failed this mathematical requirement in every observable way. Your soft hands indicated zero value in essential physical labor. Your clean teeth suggested resource consumption without production capability. Your distress at routine brutality marked you as psychologically unsuited for necessary tasks. Most damning was your assumption that human life possesses inherent value independent of practical utility. This philosophical position, while admirable in resource-abundant societies, becomes actively dangerous in communities where survival depends on ruthless calculation of individual worth. The process is handled with the same grim efficiency characterizing all frontier institutions. Quick, quiet, permanent. By morning, it will be as if you never stepped off that train. The conductor will note that you didn't reboard for the return journey, but passengers disappearing between stops is too common an occurrence to warrant investigation. Your belongings will be distributed among people who can make practical use of them. Your money goes into the community fund, supporting widows and orphans. Your clothes will be altered to fit men whose survival depends on looking respectable when circumstances require it. The only permanent trace of your existence, a brief ledger entry recording the disposal of an unknown individual who died of natural causes, the perfectly natural consequence of being unprepared for reality. The eternal lesson that could save your life. Dawn breaks over Main Street once again, painting the wooden buildings gold and making the town look almost civilized in the gentle morning light. Another train pulls into the station, releasing its human cargo of people carrying the exact same assumptions that doomed you just hours before. The Wild West wasn't where civilization broke down. It was a laboratory where civilization was completely reinvented according to principles bearing no resemblance to anything that came before or after. It was the most sophisticated, ruthless, and successful social experiment in human history, creating communities that functioned with deadly efficiency while operating by rules that would seem utterly insane to outside observers. Here's what makes this story truly haunting. You never stood a chance. Your failure wasn't personal weakness. It was the inevitable result of carrying assumptions calibrated for one society into an environment governed by completely different operational principles. You were a product of civilization, trying to function in a system that had consciously rejected everything civilization represented. You believed in the fundamental goodness of people, the importance of individual rights, the value of due process, and the possibility of reasoning with unreasonable situations. All admirable qualities, all absolutely lethal in the wrong context. The frontier represented America's most honest moment, when social pretenses were stripped away completely and human nature revealed itself in forms both magnificent and terrible. It was a place where civilization's comfortable lies were abandoned in favor of brutal truths about what people actually do when survival is genuinely at stake. My question for you, and I really want to see your thoughts in the comments, if you were somehow transported back to a frontier town tomorrow, what single modern attitude or assumption do you think would be most likely to get you killed? Would it be your belief in individual rights, your expectation of due process, your assumption that reasonable people can work out differences through discussion? Think carefully about your answer, because understanding what would doom you historically might just help you recognize the assumptions you're making about your own society right now. These communities lasted only a few decades before being absorbed into expanding networks of conventional law and established social structures. But during their brief existence, they demonstrated that human societies can function according to radically different principles than thousands of years of previous experience had suggested possible. Your hypothetical sacrifice would have been part of that ongoing education, a contribution to social evolution that eventually produced something unprecedented in human experience. The frontier taught America who we really were when comfortable illusions were stripped away. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to join me for more journeys into history's most dangerous places. Next week, we're exploring why you wouldn't survive a single day in medieval Europe. And trust me, after researching that topic, the Wild West is going to seem like a vacation resort. Hit that notification bell, share this video with someone brave enough to handle historical reality, and remember, the past wasn't just a different time, it was a completely different world, governed by rules that most modern people couldn't even begin to comprehend. Until next time, stay curious, stay humble, and be grateful you're living in an era where your soft hands and unmarked knuckles don't automatically mark you for elimination. The frontier was America's classroom for learning who we really were when comfortable illusions were stripped away. Your hypothetical story was part of that curriculum, a lesson about human adaptability that future generations needed to learn, written in the brief span of a single, fatal day. Drop survived if you think you would have made it, eliminated if you're honest about your chances. Let's see how many people really understand what survival meant in 1878.